All right. So we are here with David Davidian, and David has been everything from light designer, production manager, video director over the past, close to 50 years now. So we're going to let David kind of give us a brief overview of his career and how he got started, and then I'll ask him some questions.
Okay, hi.
Go ahead, David.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, it's like I say, I do everything unless it makes noise. So, you know, uh, but I mean, how I started, it's kind of I really literally fell into this industry. I was a young kid, teenager who fell in love with rock music as I was a teenager, and used to spend a lot of time with my friends driving around. Had a trunk full of 8-track cassettes, and in an effort to figure out how I could get closer to this business, I just came up with the thought of maybe I could put on some shows. So as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, I put on some local shows and local VFWs and all that with local bands that lived in the little town that I grew up in. And those shows were successful. And I made some money and all that. So I got excited and I wanted to do a national.
And where were you living? Where was this?
It's called New Bedford, Massachusetts, at the beginning of Cape Cod. The beginning of Cape Cod. Big whaling city back in the day.
And what year would have this been?
It would have been 1971 into 72. 71. It would have been actually those would have been 71. Definitely. So I went to my best friend's father, who was a bookie, and I got his father to loan me $10,000.
Which is a lot of money back then.
And I proceeded then to go out and try and find, a national recording act. So I called around, just made phone calls, not knowing what I was doing really. And I stumbled on this lighting company who helped me, gave me the name, the phone number, and made an introduction to Premier Talent in New York City at the time. And basically helped me book this band called Canned Heat, who was popular back in those days. They had a big song going up in the country and all that kind of stuff. Woodstock, they played Woodstock and all that. So I managed to get them booked, and it was so ridiculous. I mean, me and my friends, we drove around, we saw an old rundown theater that was abandoned, and I tracked down the guy who owned it. And I said to him, if me and my friends spent the winter in there and fixed up your theater, would you let me have it for this show? And the guy said, yeah.
Wow.
So two things happened. I got a place for me and all my buddies to hang out all winter long. And we did just that. We repaired the seats. We cleaned it up. We did everything we could to make it, with what little knowledge we had as 16 to 18-year-olds, but we fixed it up and I put the show on. But the show was a disaster. It didn't make money. It failed miserably. Not miserably, but basically I managed to pay the band the rest of the money owed, and I paid the bills, but I lost the deposit money. So I came out even, but I lost the 10 grand that my friend's father lent me. And so, of course, I was desperate. Not only did I think I was going to get my legs broken back then, but that, of course, that instantly put me out of business as a promoter. But the lighting company that I had hired and who'd helped me all the way along felt felt sympathy for me and offered me a job. And a month later, I went and I said, okay. And then I went to do my first show with them. First employee they had, doing my first concert with them as a lighting guy. And then it started there. And then I started my career doing lights.
And how did you, what was the first big act that kind of took you on as on the road?
Well, on the road, it would have been, I think probably the first band that I did extensive touring with would have been Aerosmith as a lighting crew member. It was myself and Richard Ocean. Richard was the designer and I was the crew guy, and it was us in a 20-foot bobtail. And we went coast to coast with them. I mean, it was bouncing, they were still, I mean, it was the first record had just come out. I did that with them actually through the first and second records. When I started with them, it was 6 months before the first record came out.
Oh, wow.
So we were playing bars and nightclubs and all that, what to be expected. And then, that grew basically, the first record came out. And, but the first, I did extensive touring with them, but we did lots of different kind of things. In other words, for instance, us and REO Speedwagon, Aerosmith we did almost hundreds of shows with them where Aerosmith would headline on the East Coast and west of the Mississippi, and in the Midwest, REO would headline. And we did shows like that with Kiss and hundreds of bands, Roy Buchanan and, you name it. So they weren't like a headline act by any stretch then, especially out in the West Coast and all that up until that point. Even with even with Get Your Wings, where I did all of that Get Your Wings. So we just bounced around, like I say, 20-foot truck. We did, sometimes we used the house system. Sometimes we're opening for somebody. Sometimes it was our show, so forth and so on.
Do you remember what lights they were carrying at that time?
Yeah, we basically at first we had like 4 trees, 4 lighting trees. When I started, everything was pipe and boom to start with. It was a 50-pound base and 18-foot tall piece of 2-inch pipe, and you make T's on the 2-inch pipe and you hang Lecos on it. Super dangerous. You put like all old Fresnels and Lecos and all that stuff. And, I think we were 4 trees. They finally, I think, got a truss. They finally got their first truss either towards the end of Get Your Wings or Toys in the Attic, beginning of Toys in the Attic. We started with trusses. I mean, we had genie towers into that, I think, by Get Your Wings. I mean, when I saw a genie tower, I thought I died and gone to heaven. You know what I mean? Because there's no fear like taking a 18-foot piece of pipe with about 8 lights on it and trying to tip it over on a 50-pound round base, trying to tip it down and catch it as it falls.
Yeah. Wow.
Take it apart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was very hair-raising. I mean, we did a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, in that respect, things that, I mean, our industry has actually always been very blessed with having much fewer accidents than they could have had over the course of the stupid shit that we've done over the course of the years. Not intentionally, but just not realizing. In an effort to do something cool, you try, you know what I mean? You push whatever boundaries there are, and then, you certainly risk, risk the amount of weight we put up on ground supports and, then shimmying up a ground support tower and focusing when you've got, a steel truss with 60 lights on it and the ground support's going like this back and forth.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And I mean, well, the first moving truss we ever did with Aerosmith, I cannot remember exactly when. It would have been either Toys R Us, Toys in the Attic, or Get Your Wings. But there was a thing called a Vermette lift. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it was a crank, steel cable over, and it was a 4-inch tube. It was 4-inch tube that went up. It went up 18 or 20 feet, and when it was finished, it was curved. It had a curve in the top of it. You know what I mean? Okay. So when the truss was at the bottom, the top was curved. So when the truss got to the top, it pulled together and straightened itself out.
Gotcha.
Straightened itself out, right? So it had these 2 bolts on the handles, right? You had the crank handles, but attached were these like 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch or 1-inch bolts on it. So what we did is we got 2 big 1/2 inch Milwaukee drills, and we put the nut driver for those bolt handles on the Milwaukee drill, and I would stand on one side and I'd have a stage hand stand on the other. We'd put that in the handle And at the start of the show, when we had the cue, I would just drop my head like this. We'd pull the trigger on those drills, and that was the first moving truss. Coming up to the top of that thing, and it would get up to the top of that thing, and it would lock up and then really go.
So that must have been quite an effect back then.
Yeah. It was the first time that I believe it was probably the first time there ever was a moving truss from the ground up.
Wow.
You know, we do like the first song with just the two trees on the side. And then second song, there it was, you know, you pull the truss and then on, you know, fire up those drills and, you know, but I mean, the danger, the risk factor of that was just ridiculous.
Oh, I can imagine. So how long did you stay with Aerosmith? And then what was your next
about 3 or 4 years until I did the first leg of Toys in the Attic. And then at that point I had gotten my first opportunity to be a designer myself. And then I went on to do that. And Aerosmith was starting to go sideways at that point as well. You know, as you can imagine, we started when we were all kids. It was a very close-knit, open door scenario. And then as they got more well-known, the obvious things started to happen and it became a little more professional.
Yeah.
And they got a little crazier. And it was time for me personally to say, you know, enough is enough. And like I say, I had an opportunity to be a designer myself. And there, you know, but it was a great time for me. Like I said, that's when I did Sly and the Family Stone, and that was really first time I was ever in Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
I mean, same old stupid story, right? This was when the world was changing over from 2-pin to 3-pin to grounded connectors on everything. And when the company that I worked for at first only had 2-pin connectors, right? So we were going to New York, and we knew the New York codes had changed. And but we tried to trick them. What we did is we put 3-pin male connectors on all the males, but we just drilled holes in the 2-pin females.
Oh wow!
Right, so the males with the ground would fit.
Yeah.
And we started setting up, and and this was for Sly's wedding at Madison Square Garden.
Oh wow!
Right, first time I'd ever been in Madison Square Garden. And so about 3/4 of the way through it, we got like 1 or 2 trusses up, and then somebody noticed it, and they wouldn't allow us to set anything else up. And so you had no front light or anything. So we then had to use all of the in-house follow spots at Madison Square Garden. And we used the one little bit of lighting that we had up there, but we didn't have a headset system big enough. So we had to use the in-house intercom, which like didn't even have any earphones or anything. It was just a microphone. So poor Richard was sitting there during the show, just shouting into this microphone, hoping that something would happen when he said something.
Wow.
And like I say, half of the lighting system sat in the truck because, you know, they wouldn't allow 2-pin, you know, ungrounded system into the garden then.
Wow. So this was around 1976 or so?
Oh, no, this would have been 72, 3. When did Sly get married? I'd have to Google Sly's wedding. So he actually
had his wedding and then performed a concert?
That's right. Madison Square Garden. Yeah. I don't know if there's any footage on it, but Sly Stone wedding. Yeah. August 26, 1974.
Okay, wow. And so from there, just take us through kind of the 70s.
Well, as best I can. I started designing with I started my first design with Hot Tuna, a band from San Francisco, a spin-off of the Jefferson Airplane, which was Jorma Kaukonen and Jack Cassidy, and that's where I did my first probably regular design work. I had done local shows and all that up until that point, but that was probably my first real.
Did you do any shows with the Grateful Dead, with them playing with the Grateful Dead? No.
No, no, never did. It just Yorma and Yak. I never did any. I saw them. We were visiting. We were in the same camp. I would go,
Yeah.
we'd go see their shows and they would come see our shows and all that stuff. But no, I never personally worked on those shows. No, just, you know, um, I don't know. And then, I mean, what else did I do? I don't know. I have to look. Let me
It
see.
was like, did some work with Gil Scott-Heron,
Yeah,
Ed Nugent.
That's right. Then, yeah, Ted Nugent did the tour on the first Ted Nugent album. It was good, fun, few trees. I mean, it was like a 3 or 4 tree system. And, same thing, always driving the truck. You know what I mean? I drove truck for the first 10 years that I did this easily.
Wow.
So it was load. I mean, you load in, set up, do the show, load out, and drive to the next show. So there wasn't much time for sleeping. There was 2 of us, one person fetal position in the front on the right-hand side of the bench seat and the other one driving. Whoever felt the most awake started driving after the show. And then, he just kept taking turns. I mean, I remember one time in New York City with Hot Tuna after we'd done it. Hot Tuna was notorious for long, long shows. Their shortest show was an hour and a half, and they would play up to 4 and 5 hours.
Wow.
Oh, absolutely. All the time. Especially they would do these shows in New York at the Beacon or the Academy of Music, and they'd do 2 shows. The first show was from like 7:30 to 11, and the second show was like midnight to 7 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah. So I remember after one of those, I was driving back to the hotel, thank God, but I was falling asleep. I was driving a truck and falling asleep at every traffic light in Manhattan until finally the guy in the other seat, he kept asking me, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And I'd go to the next light and I'd fall asleep at the light. Finally, he just yanked me out of the driver's seat and drove himself. But,
So that was pretty commonplace back then.
What's that?
Just, pulling crazy hours and, driving on no sleep.
This job in general is crazy hours. Anybody who does this job, anybody's normal day on this job starts at 8 or 9 in the morning and doesn't get done till 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily these days you can go to a bus and sleep on a bus while somebody else drives. But no, when I first started, I was driving as well. So that, of course, removed more time. But, first time I saw a bus, I thought I died and gone to heaven again,
Amazing. So looking at, you were working with, some pretty big bands in the 70s. So I guess kind of once you got tapped in, it was pretty easy for you to find work back then. It was just kind of jumping from one tour to the next.
No, I mean, honestly, Ben, for me, I don't know. I don't know. I guess I was certainly lucky enough to work, right? But for me, my whole life, it's been, I do a job, the job ends, I look for another one. I take the first one that's offered to me. And then I do that one until it ends. And then I call as many people or send out as many letters or ask whoever I can think of and until I get another job. So there's never been any kind of, let's use the word strategizing or anything like that. I mean, most of the work came through connections, through what they call today being networking and all that.
Yeah.
I just lost the big picture here. There you go. Accidental click. So it comes from networking. Again, when I was working for the company would find jobs. They'd be the ones that say, okay, we got this tour next, then I'd go on to that. So up until 1979, I was really literally doing pretty much whatever the company was able to get.
What company? What was the name of that company you were working for?
It was called Virgo Light. And it was Richard Ocean and Sam Schneiderman were the 2 owners. Great guys, very creative, very, very, very smart, very great designer. Richard and Sam both taught me everything, taught me all my basics, and gave me the opportunity to do that. So yeah, all of that, Journey, all that was through Virgolite, and I was crew chief on Journey, so I wasn't the designer. Kenny Medic was the designer.
Yeah,
which was a great, but talk about a hard tour, Whew.
So kind of the mid to late 70s, you see the music industry kind of become this really, really big business. And I'm sure that kind of affected, touring a little bit, and it becoming, maybe more corporatized or professional. Obviously the gear getting, a little bit more advanced. What were some of the biggest changes you saw kind of towards the mid to late 70s?
Well, actually, to me, that real business change didn't come to me more till closer to the mid 80s, really, till 83, 84. I mean, I think that it was still a business in its infancy and up until really even, like I say, 83, 84. And really from 84 onwards is when it really became, priorities changed and things like that changed. But I mean, for me, what big changes? Like I said, the invention of the Genie Tower was, incredibly life-changing for me. And same with the truss, the lighting truss and all that stuff. And of course, the advent of scrolling color changers, all of those things. I mean, with the Virgolite company, we came up with these things called relays where we could plug two lights into the same dimmer, but take a switch and then switch between. So one, when the switch was here, you'd have this light. When the switch was there, you'd have the other light. So you could basically plug more lights into the same dimming capacity.
Yeah.
All those kind of things were interesting. And of course, moving structural, when you're able to start moving truss structures and all that was, a real leap forward in technology. And of course, moving lights were, another great advance. And then, I mean, at that point, really it's, and then, I mean, the advent of video and all that stuff is also, which the advent of video came somewhere around the mid 80s, first video shows. I think Journey was the first one to really take it out on the road. But, those are the big changes. I mean, at this point, a lot of it is a lot to me of kind of, it's the same technology, but whoever it is takes it and reshapes it into, different visions. I mean, different shapes. Like I say, I liken it to balloon animals. You take, each guy makes a different balloon animal about the same balloon. But I mean, really, since the advent of trusses and moving lights and video, the technology has improved, but it hasn't changed much. There hasn't been any major step forward. I mean, basically, I consider myself responsible for the creation of the large format, what turned into the synchro light and all that. Back in 1979, when I was living in San Francisco, I happened to get this job helping as a stagehand for that Bruce Jenner movie, the what is it, the Village People movie, Can't Stop the Music or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And in the middle of the shoot, all of a sudden we were doing it at some big disco, and they turned on these humongous lights that just plowed through the rear windows of the building, and I never seen anything like it. So I ran outside and I saw that they were these searchlights. And I wrote down the name of the company. It was called Pitchell Industries. And I wrote down the name of the company. And I called them up and I asked them, what are these things? How'd they get them? And they said, well, these things, they're military use. Sometimes we're beginning now to rent them out for like theater openings and all that stuff. And I had told them, I said, wow, these things would be amazing to be able to actually yoke up. And it took me, that was 1979. And finally, when was it? 1986, 87. I finally Pitchell finally allowed show lights at the time to take them and try and develop a yoke, pan and tilt yoke for them and a color changer and all that, which show lights proceeded to do for the Monsters of Rock tour for me. But it unfortunately was a was a failure, and they never came to light. So of course, very, very depressing for me at the time. And
was this just primarily used for outside shows, or were you using them indoors?
Oh, I wanted to use them for all the shows.
Yeah.
For all the shows. And then a company then that, also predicated the breaking up of show lights. And one of the companies that got formed from that, along with like show power and show rigging and all that, and all access, was a company called Bright Light, which was, people saw, they saw that and they wanted to try and take it further. And then Jack Calmes saw that. And then Jack started to develop his version, which became the Synchrolite. And really it was Jack's light that, Jack brought me over there because he knew that it was my baby, and brought me over there right before he was, about to really release them. And it made me really happy. It was kind of choked me up to see actually what I had wanted so long ago finally come to pass. And then, of course, I called a bunch of my friends and told them that it's finally, that these things are super cool, and they started to use them, and there you go. And then there came Synchrolights and all that. So, that technology, and then the other thing that I really probably was my thing was doing the catwalk truss, which I did first for Sammy back in the early 80s. And then Bon Jovi used it, of course, much success in 89. And, that whole truss thing, which was...
I was going to ask you about that. So that was kind of your design.
I think so. Yeah, that was my design. I don't think anybody had done it before me. I remember standing there looking. I was just sitting in, I think it was some show somewhere. And I looked up and I thought, wow, it would be fucking cool if I could get the musician up there somehow. And then, again, it was developed actually with me by Eric Pierce through Show Lights, Bertha Show rigging and all that. And I first got to use it with Sammy, and yeah.
And remind me, you worked on the Van Halen 5150 tour.
5150.
He went up in the truss on that tour?
Correct. Yeah, yes, he also went up on his own. He went up on his own as well. And on that, and OU812 I did in the about half of the FUCK tour.
Yeah. And then going back to the truss, the Bon Jovi truss, that was much larger, right? It actually looked like it went out over the crowd. It went all the way
around the bowl. It went all the way around the bowl.
And so that would that lower from the ceiling?
Correct.
Okay. So
correct. That lower to the ceiling, where my original ones, and I had no part in that design. That was done before me. They had just seen the idea, and that was what they wanted to do for him. And that was Bad Medicine. That was that was the 89. The 87 one was when he had the trolley that he put his foot in.
Oh, yeah.
Went out to front of house.
Yes.
And, so they had, I didn't do that design. I started on that tour a little bit, like a couple of months after it started. It was a little bit of a political thing where they didn't want me, somebody didn't want me back. And at the end of the day, I got called back.
Gotcha.
It was on my daughter's birthday, which would have been probably her second or third birthday. I got a call from all of the band in the room saying, we need you back. When can you come back? Et cetera, et cetera. So
gotcha.
But it was my original design, if you will. But yes. I didn't design that show per se. I redesigned it, changed all the colors, redid all the cueing, and rebuilt the show from the hardware up. But I didn't design the hardware.
So let's talk a little bit about when you design a show, like what your process was or how it's changed. Like, when you first get called on to design a show, what's your process like?
Well, a lot of it depends on the kind of band, the kind of band. It's kind of a multi-pronged thing. It's the kind of band that it is. It's the budget that there is. And then the venues that they're going to play, what size venues. So you have to kind of design within as best you can within the venues you're going to have. And then design within their budget as best you can, or at least what you think their budget is, because usually those are kind of kept secret usually for a little while at least, and then what kind of music it is. So that's really the three factors that I would think, and of course the music itself. But uh, a folk rock band isn't going to have the same kind of system that a hard rock band is going to be, that a techno band is going to be, that a punk band is going to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, for instance, say you worked with Kiss, right, on the Crazy Nights tour.
That's correct.
Did you design the lighting for that?
Yes.
So your process for that, you've got the budget, kind of Kiss is a loud group. What do? You sit down with the songs, and a couple weeks before the tour starts, what's your process like in putting together the cues and everything?
Well, the cues are different from, as far as the show goes, the first thing I guess I try and do is try and come up with a unique structure, especially with a band like that. And back in those days, a lot of, that was the day then that lit up trusses and all that stuff was very in vogue.
Yeah.
So you just try and come up with an interesting structure, and that kind of goes back to the balloon animals. You know what I mean? Whether it's going to be a V, or whether it's going to be fingers, or whether it's going to be a circle or a star, or whatever it's going to be, you kind of try and figure out a structure that you think is interesting and then could be appropriate. The Scorpions had a system that looked like a scorpion, et cetera, physically looked like a scorpion from Ollie and all that. So once you come up with a structure that you find interesting and you think it'd work, and then that's really the first thing you pitch to the band is the structure. You do it, and then you come up with a stage structure that was also that, and then you get that past them to come up with the cues. Then it comes down to lighting, then it comes down to like the basic tenets of lighting, making sure your side light is covered, floor light, back light, front light, key light, spotlights are there for everybody. And then it's the building of your colors and your wash strength. You have to make sure with a big stage, you got to make sure you have ample lights to cover the stage to be able to look powerful, and then to fill the area with either a solid color. And then you get into the whole circuiting side where you want to be able to break up the washes circuiting wise so you can combine them, because you can't just turn everything on of every wash, because it just gets mushy. And, this way you can get one half of the stage red, the other half blue. And that's all done through circuit back in those days, especially because you're talking about parkans, electricity, you know what I mean? It's all done through circuiting. And then you look for special effects, whatever special effects, both lighting wise and, whether it's pyro or things like that, raising drum risers and all those kind of things that you want to add into it. So, you just kind of go through that process and pick your colors, pick your circuiting, make sure that you're covered from all angles, make sure you've got lighting, make sure you're circuited so you can have a little bit of light sometimes and a lot of light the other times, and all that kind of stuff. And then you build it up, you kind of build it that way. And then cue to cue stuff, that happens, well, in those days, that happened in rehearsals, really.
Yeah.
Happened in rehearsals.
And back then, do you remember how many days you'd actually get to kind of put the show together? During rehearsals? Would it vary?
All depends on the band. But with the Van Halen Bon Jovi shows, it was about 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
2 to 3 weeks with those larger shows.
And say with a band like Kiss, were they actively involved in giving you feedback like, I don't like that, or were you able to kind of just do what you wanted?
Every band, well, it's both. You do what you want. Some very few of them actually sit there and say, hey, I want this song to be red. I want this song to be blue. I want this song to be, a mixture. I want to use ACLs in this song. I want to use whatever, Ray lights in this song, et cetera, et cetera. But they all know what they like and what they don't like. So usually, for the most part, you do what you think is right. And then they'd either play underneath it, or they'd come out front, and then you'd play the song and you'd run the song with them looking at it, and they'd say, like it, don't like it, et cetera, et cetera. So for the most part, I've always had pretty good luck. All in all, I have no problem with I mean, I'm a firm believer that we live in a service industry, that our job is to do what they want. I mean, I've had very good luck with artists that people have said are difficult only because I don't try and sell them on my vision.
Yeah.
If they have an idea, they want to do something, and I say, hey, look, let's do it. You look at it, you like it, you don't like it. I'll offer a suggestion as to what could be different or another option. And if they want to do it, fine. If they want to stick with the way they want, fine. I mean, to me, it's like, you want fries with that burger, it's whatever you want. We are there to serve them. We're not there to try and say, this is my creative vision and I can't pollute my design with other ideas, my whole vision to be misconstrued. That's all, to me, it's all great, fine. It's not me. So,
yeah.
So, I mean, I think I've had pretty good luck overall. I mean, if I had rough days or problems or conflicts with people, sure, of course, everybody does. But
yeah,
overall, I think I've been pretty successful over the years with having my designs accepted and enjoyed and not contested.
Yeah, that's great.
By the band.
Looking back at the artists that you've worked with, which were some of the artists that you felt really kind of creatively juiced up for and felt it was a good working relationship? You felt really good with what the budget you were able to work with, or just kind of what you were doing, and it was just a great experience for you.
Oh, well, I mean, honestly, I mean, who could really complain about Bon Jovi and Van Halen?
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, there always are politics. I mean, there's politics in this business run rampant. Whether there's always a bit of a clash between the creative and the production side of things. There's a clash with, sometimes with some of the artists and politics and all that. But no, I mean, overall, I mean, I had wonderful time with, Bon Jovi and Van Halen. I was able to certainly do lots of shows that I was very proud of. Jackson Browne, the same thing. I mean, a different level of budget and all that, but he was always very supportive. It was a smaller show, but he was always lovely and never, I never had problems. I mean, with Jackson, we were the ones that created the Bandit green system. I mean, it was Jackson that came to me, Jackson and all that. And we had talked a little bit about the whole LED system. But it was actually Jackson that through the management that came to me and said, I want to do an all LED system to do a smaller footprint, carbon footprint or green footprint on the world. And I said, okay, great. I first of all, to be honest, I said to him, well, this is all new technology. Are you sure that's going to be within the budget? And he's like, check it out. And, I'll decide whether or not we can do it. And I went to Bandit, who was our provider. And, the lights that we have now, lights by no means in comparison to what we did back then, but we made a whole lighting system out of nothing but LED fixtures. And it was terrific. And it was the very first thing that was ever done like that. And Bandit then saw that and created their whole green arm of the company because of that.
That's great. What year was that?
Well, I don't know.
Early 2000s or mid to?
No, I think it was before. Let me look at something here. I got some. I don't know if there's a date on this. Oh yeah. Oh no, it's 2008. I think.
2008. Yeah.
I think it was 2008. Cool. Yeah, I saw a little article. I had Bandit framed this article and sent it to me about it. So it says 2008 there.
Yeah.
No,
great.
Again, I don't know what anybody else is doing. So I think this is what I understand from what I've heard. So I'll just put a disclaimer in there. I don't follow stuff. I don't like, you know what I mean? I go to visit other people's shows as a friend, not as like somebody who's like taking notes. And you know what I mean? So I don't really, but I think it was certainly, if not the first, one of the first, but I don't know if that even matters.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it is what it was. But I'm very happy to be able to have created that whole arm of the company. I mean, it's just like Molfe color changes. I was the first one. Sammy Hagar, he's had that song Red, right? So of course I used to try every freaking way I could to try and get as much red onto the stage as that time. So when Molfe started to really become popular, I used to spend like an hour and a half every day. I had like a 6 or 8 Molfes, and I would tape gel onto the front of them, but I'd be close to like I'd fold it so it was like 2 inches away from the bulbs. You know what I mean? I'd fold it like a Christmas present around the Molfe, so I only need to get the one song out of it. You know what I mean?
So is that because you needed some space so they wouldn't melt?
Right.
Because they were so hot?
Yeah, it would melt. So I'd have to fold the gel like a Christmas present, like so the gel was like 2 or 3 inches away from the bulb source.
Yeah.
And even then it would barely last the one song.
Wow.
You know, but then Eric and them saw that and they said, well, maybe we try and make a color changer for that. And then the first color changer I got from them for the Molfes had a bud box, an electrical duplex box, right?
Yeah.
With a red button in the middle of it. So every time I pressed the button, it would advance one color. And when it got to the last color, it would automatically scroll back to the beginning. And then I get to press it 6 more times to advance to the next color.
Wow. So,
and, stupid stuff. I mean, the trusses, I told you about all this ground, this like wavy ground stuff. So the advent of the show tower, right? I was with Sammy. We were doing, and I was with this rigger friend of mine, Torch, Arthur Russo, amazing guy, was such a true friend, but we had a ground support with some, I think what they were called, it was like a version of the Vermette Tower with this. And it was a little bit more heavy duty with a heavy duty base, right? A heavier duty base. But we put this truss up like the first 2 shows. And, who knows, maybe I overhung it, but it was stupidly dangerous, crazy. So I sat with Torch and I called Eric up and I said, hey, look, why don't you send me 2 of these bases, weld the spigots for the truss on it, and send me 20 foot of truss and put a cap on it with the motor, and I'll use that. I think it's going to work better than this. And he took full size trusses, and that's what we did. He welded the bottom on it, sent it out, made this cap with the 2 wheels, ran a steel cable over it, put the hook on the bottom for the motor, and that's how we did it. And it was 100 times better. There came the birth of the show tower, where he, of course, made it more sophisticated, shrunk it down to the small truss so it would fit inside the big truss, and went from there. But, necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Yeah. Wow. So we're running out of time, unfortunately. We haven't even touched upon your video stuff. So let's kind of touch upon your video stuff. When did you kind of make the transition more into doing video stuff? And when did that really come on the scene? You mentioned that Journey kind of may have been the first band to maybe take a IMAX system on the road.
Yeah, I think they did like 1985, 6 or something like that for Escape, I think it was. But it came for me through my dear friend Danny O'Brien, who owns, what was BCC into NEP or whatever the changes. It was Danny O'Brien. Danny and I were stagehands together in Boston. He worked a place called the Orpheum Theater, and I was a stage manager at Cape Cod Coliseum. So I would bring Danny's guys and Danny down to work in the summertime at Cape Cod Coliseum, and I would work at the Orpheum in the wintertime, right? And so Danny started a video company. Danny saw the opportunity when that happened and started his own video company right around 1986, because I remember he had a screen at the Irvine Amphitheater, and I was there with Bon Jovi, and his screen was there, and everybody kind of thought it was cool and everything. So Danny called me up one day and he said, hey, you call great spots. I'll bet you could call video. I bet you could be a video director. I said, sure. I said, thanks. What's it take? And also, and again, it's all just by luck, is that I had met Jake Berry and the AC/DC guys in the early 80s with Saxon. I was working with Saxon, and then with Ronnie Montrose. Ronnie Montrose and with Gamma opened for a bunch of the Back in Black tour. So I met them then, and then I went on to work with Saxon, who also Malcolm really liked, and Malcolm would come by, and I'd met Jake then and met them and remained in touch and friends. And Danny had then said to me that AC/DC are going to take their first video screen out, and Jake and the guys, they like it. They thought you'd be perfect for it. So honestly, what I did was I went to his shop. I got explained what a switcher was, and this was literally a little Grass Valley 110 switcher, 6 inputs, et cetera, and got some books and learned like some basic video framing stuff, and tried to learn some of the terminology. And I did one show in a nightclub in Hollywood with a band called Delight, where, Danny just found out whether I could push the buttons or not, or execute. And then the next show was in an arena with AC/DC.
Wow. And this would have been the Razor's Edge tour?
Correct. Yeah, it was like 91, something like that.
Yeah. Wow.
91. And then it started. And then everybody seemed to like it. And I went on to do more and continue to do more. And I mean, as far as bands go, Rush was probably without a doubt the best band I ever worked for video. And some of the best group of guys ever born.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Nobody has a bad word to say about them.
They can't.
Yeah.
It's impossible because there's no bad to be said about them.
Yeah.
Period. Personally, professionally, I mean, the best and most unique rehearsal scenario I've ever seen, and probably ever will see. They would come in. It was usually about anywhere from 2 weeks to 21 days, 2 weeks to 21 days, 2 to 3 weeks. But whatever the time was, they'd come in the morning. And they'd come in every single day, starting from the first day. They would come in at showtime and play the whole set front to back without stopping. They'd do their intermission when their intermission was, and then we would basically join in as we are ready. In other words, on the first day, we probably wouldn't even have all the trusses up and all that. And then we'd work all day long and do whatever we were going to do. And of course, after they left, because they were done always by end of show, which was 10 or 11. So we'd work all through the night. But every single day, they would come in like clockwork. At, whatever it was, 8 o'clock, they'd play their show start to finish. And then by the end of the rehearsal, we were all there. And that was it. They wouldn't stop. Most bands like, stop, I want to go over this. No, let's try this again. No, let's never. They played it front to back, and we'd meet about it afterwards and say, what's going on with this? Why isn't this happening? When is this going to be working, or any of those kind of things? But never would they, in the middle of their set, stop it and back up.
Interesting. Because,
it worked so well.
Yeah.
But I don't know if any bands have I think it's a combination of trust in your guys. And then for them, they wanted to get into show mode, period. Show mode. Yeah. For them, that's all they ultimately cared about is performing. And they wanted to find out within themselves, what was working, what wasn't, how it felt and all that. And even what was going on around them was somewhat secondary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that was it. That was their focus. Boom. So they get in, they play right through. And that was
very cool.
Then they'd leave.
I mean, I feel like I could just do a deep dive with you on just some of these projects. Seeing that we just have a little bit more time left, and maybe we can do this again and we can go into specifics on some of these artists.
Do it as many times
later on.
Do it as many times as you want.
Yeah, great. I mean, I would love to really get into your time with Van Halen, AC/DC, even the Kiss tour you did.
Yeah, the Kiss tour, Rush. The Kiss tour, I basically designed it. I did the video shoots, and then that was one of the few that I I had a lighting director do it because I was tied up with Bon Jovi and Van Halen at the time.
Yeah.
I couldn't actually go out on it, but I did do like the first 2 or 3 shows, and I did the Crazy Nights video shoot, and we did like 3 songs with Marty Kalner in some freaking place in San Bernardino, but whatever. There's like 3 or 4 songs. They're out there on YouTube somewhere.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we're at an interesting point where, the whole industry's been, shut down for a year. You've been working by the looks of it with the Hollywood Vampires.
And
Alice, yeah. I've heard he's amazing to work with as well.
He is, man. He's a brilliant. I mean, again, you want to talk about one of the best guys on earth. Alice is an absolute joy to work with, an incredibly wonderful human being, a true professional, and I mean, an artist. He's one of those guys, he's one of those guys that it's like special moments. I listened to Alice before I was in the business, 68, 69. I mean, he's one of the few guys. I went to his show as a punter, to Killer as a punter, actually.
Nice.
And he was one of those artists that I truly enjoyed as a audience, as a how you say, as a fan, but I respect. Yeah. I mean, to me, fan. I get scared of the word fan because it's tied to fanatic, which I've never been about anybody. But yeah, such respect, and to be able to like talk with Alice, hang out, have a personal friendship with him, for me, it's like it's really a joy. For me, also, like I did the Kinks for a while, same thing. For me to be able to go with Ray Davies to his house and help him pack his suitcase to go out on the road.
Wow.
Or sit down and go to dinner with Ray. I mean, sit down and go out and have dinner with him and just talk about shit. I mean, that's like, that's definitely a little as close to pinch me moments. And same with John Fogerty. You know what I mean? I mean, this is Creedence. I mean, to be able to be walking around a site with him and just talking and, I mean, those are pinch me moments for me a little bit, but I mean, again, I always think of people that I have respect for their work. I never think of them as glowing in the dark or walking on water or any of that stuff. But I mean, Alice is very much like all of those people. I mean, such respect, such great music, and such a great human being, him and his wife and all his family and everything about it. The band is a great band. It's such an enjoyable place to work.
That's great. So what is the next year or two look for you like? I mean, not knowing kind of when things are going to start getting back in the swing. Do you have any plans?
Well, I mean, the next year for me, it's really Alice and the Vampires,
Uh-huh.
I mean, Alice and the Vampires both have shows that they've had on the books since, 2019. And, Alice was starting to do it. We did Australia in February 2020, came back and then got shut down. So they all have shows that they've been putting back and putting back and putting back. With Alice, they're trying to get started sometime. They're just waiting, really. As soon as they have a clear number, they're going to go. Everybody's hoping this year it's going to be by the end of summer. Yeah. And by, both of those bands have dates that they just keep moving until somebody opens a gate.
Yeah.
And so really that'll be it. That'll, as soon as the gate gets open, they're going to be out there within months,
Great. And you're doing tour managing with Alice?
And the Vampires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Tour managing with Alice and the Vampires.
Awesome. Well, listen, we're at an hour. Unbelievable. I feel like I just have scratched the surface and we didn't even touch upon a lot of the things that I even wanted to talk to you about.
Sure.
Sorry. So perhaps too much. No, it's fine. I mean, perhaps in the next month or so, we can do this again and we can kind of zone into some specific artists that I'd love to just ask you about in more detail.
Sure. Whatever you want to do. I mean, just know that I mean, as long as it's good things, I don't kiss and tell.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I mean, I wanted to really talk about, the Bon Jovi stuff, the Van Halen tours that you did.
Yep.
So, and even some of your most recent work,
Sure. I mean, look at those In Sync tours, the no strings attached and all that.
Yeah, like Rihanna, Enrique
Rihanna,
Iglesias. I mean, we didn't even touch upon that stuff. Yeah.
All that silly stuff. I mean, it's like I say, I'm old, but all the Saxon stuff and Ronnie Montrose for years. I mean, crap.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Frampton. I mean, just looking through this resume, it's just unbelievable. I mean, I could probably just talk your ear off for hours, but let's stop here and we'll pick it up for part 2 in the future. But I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and stay healthy, and we'll chat hopefully soon.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for wanting to hear anything I got to say.
Of course. I love it.
All right.
Okay. Take care, David.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.